Joining us now is a very special guest, editor, author, former union minister and a co-petitioner along with Prashant Bhushan calling for the scrapping of criminal contempt by the Supreme Court. I'm joined by Arun Shourie from Lavasa near Pune. Appreciate your joining us. Thank you very much, Mr. Shourie. You, of course, have written extensively on the Supreme Court in the past. But now it is Prashant Bhushan who finds himself in the eye of a storm. The Supreme Court wants him to reconsider his statements directed, they say, against judges in the court. They say if he doesn't do so, he could be sentenced on Monday. Prashant has refused to apologize, saying he sees no reason to reconsider. What's your view? Should Prashant Bhushan apologize to the Supreme Court?
Well, that is, of course, a personal decision. But I would be surprised if he apologizes. That is asking too much of a person. And after all, then the person must genuinely believe that, yes, he did something wrong. Prashant would have considered the matter over the last few weeks and months. So I would think that the best course, you see, it is for the court that the court has made its point in its judgment. After all, they have spent time in writing or dictating a 108-page judgment. And it is best that they leave that judgment to the test of time.
Are you saying that the court should not use its jurisdiction to sentence Prashant Bhushan for what they believe is contempt of court?
I certainly think so. I do not think that the stature of the court is enhanced by that. Look here, we have said what we wanted to say, and let the citizenry judge it, let everybody reflect on it. If you go on sort of swatting a mosquito with an axe, you will only hurt yourself. And it does not behove the dignity of the court to do this. After all lawyers and every citizen concerned with the judiciary wants the court to be held in high esteem.
Let's, in that context, Mr. Shourie, look at what...
If I just add one sentence.
Yes.
It is never a good idea for people in high office to stand on prestige. It is best for them to let their words speak, let their judgment speak, let their conduct speak, the discharge of official duties speak. That is the way. You know, this high chair on which anybody sits, the president, the prime minister, these judges, secretaries of the government, or whoever are big people, or the chiefs of staff, that chair is meant to be sat upon, not to be stood upon.
Very interestingly put. A chair is meant to be sat upon, not stood upon. Let's look at the specifics, Mr. Shourie. Prashant Bhushan's one tweet that the Supreme Court and the last 4 Chief Justices have played a particular role in destroying democracy. According to the court, this tweet has the effect of destabilizing the very foundation of the important pillar of Indian democracy. There is no manner of doubt that a tweet, which is of course just 280 characters, tends to shake the public confidence in the institution of judiciary. Lots of big words there. How do you see it?
280 characters shaking the central pillar of democracy, and that is just not... and that shows, as I'd be repeating myself to say that betrays a sense of nervousness about that central pillar of democracy and Indian democracy, which is not warranted. I don't think that the reputation of the Supreme Court is so fragile as the judges have made it out to be, that some small 280 characters, not even words, are going to destabilize democracy and bring the Supreme Court into contempt and so on. Not at all.
But when someone says the last 4 Chief Justices have played a particular role in destroying democracy, is that fair criticism?
Yes, because I'll mention this. Supposing someone says this and you genuinely feel that this is really bringing the Supreme Court into, it's shaking people's faith in the Supreme Court. Under the law, you are obliged to give the person the opportunity to prove his point. That's the law. Truth is a defense.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the case during the British period, but when the Venkatachalaya Committee reviewed the working of the Indian Constitution, mm-hmm. they said that the law of contempt should be amended and truth should be made a defense. This amendment was introduced in Mr. Bajpayee's time in 2003. Then, of course, the Lok Sabha dissolved, and it was taken up again by Dr. Manmohan Singh's government, and in 2006 it was passed.
But so is truth a defense? Is truth a defense, Mr. Shourie, in this case, when you say that the Supreme Court and the last 4 Chief Justices have played a particular role in destroying democracy? Can you prove it?
Yes, why not? You see, you will take up, supposing I had said it, I would give you a list of cases, mm-hmm. A list of instances in which the Supreme Court did not act as the dike, as it might have, to protect the destruction of democracy that we have seen in the last 6 years.
Give me an example.
False encounters, lynching. These were things that were setting a new norm, that yes, it is all right for people in the name of, say, protecting the cow to kill people. Assume that. Assume that I am true. Mm-hmm. Will you not then, are you not obliged to give me the opportunity to prove my point? Similarly, habeas corpus, it is the most precious right under Article 21 also. I cannot be deprived of my life and liberty without the due process of law. Mm-hmm. Now people have been put in jail. The patriots of the first order who have defended India in international fora, like Dr. Farooq Abdullah, have been incarcerated or under house arrest for this long period. And the court has not taken notice of that. The maladministration that occurred, the rocking of administration that occurred in Assam, and the alienation of the people there by I would characterize these as epileptic orders of the Supreme Court in regard to CAA and its implementation in Assam.
So you're saying this is all, so therefore this tweet, according to you, constitutes fair criticism. Let's come to the second one, Mr. Shourie, where yes. Prashant Bhushan says the Chief Justice of India, referring to Justice Bobde, rides a 50 lakh motorcycle belonging to a BJP leader at Raj Bhavan at Nagpur without mask or helmet at a time when he keeps the SC in lockdown mode, denying citizens their fundamental rights to access judiciary. Now it's been proven, and Prashant Bhushan has admitted it, that the Chief Justice was only sitting on the bike. He wasn't riding on it. It was, it wasn't as if it was a gift given to him by a BJP leader. And therefore they feel, according to the court, that this is the kind of comment that again scandalizes the judiciary in some way and scandalizes the Chief Justice's office.
Rajdeep, I do not agree with the honorable judges in this. And I am indebted to the Chief Justice because he settled my brief at a time when there was a very big case against me mm-hmm. in Maharashtra, and so I'm indebted to him. Mm-hmm. And my advice, my counsel would be, please do not sit on motorbikes, whether you are riding them or not, which cost 50 lakhs, if they do. And if they belong, certainly if they belong to the leader of a political party, and even more so of a ruling party, it's not a good idea. What is the signal that you are giving? You can't afford that kind of motorcycle on the salary
so
of a judge.
It was just a photograph. It was just a photograph. Is that, are we saying that even people have the right to make such comments? Is that what you're saying, that this comes under the right to free speech?
No, not only that, my friend, I am saying more than that, mm-hmm. that for a person in high public office or in any public office, there is no distinction between private life and public life. After all, you are sending a signal. I mean, supposing you said that the Chief Justice was actually rushing to the hospital to aid somebody who was in distress mm-hmm. and riding the motorcycle, I think that would be a very understandable thing. Now you are saying that actually he was not going anywhere. He was just posing for a photograph. You are compounding the problem.
So the question, Mr. Shourie, and the court seems to suggest this, is that while they respect Prashant Bhushan's track record in PIL litigation, they believe he's a habitual offender when it comes to criticizing the court. They cite, for example, and this is a separate contempt case which has come against him, his remarks in 2009 to a magazine where he said allegations of corruption, according to him at the time, half of the previous 16 chief justices were corrupt. Now, when you make a statement like that half of the previous 16 chief justices were corrupt, and this is in 2009, does that not lower the dignity of the court and therefore invite contempt?
No. The first point, again, I have to repeat myself, Rajdeep, this is not a question of a TV show. If Prashant Bhushan says that, the first obligation of the court under the law, as ratified not only by the Parliament, but by the Supreme Court itself, by the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court. In my own case, 5 judges sitting there, unanimous judgment is that you are obliged to ask him, please prove that the last X, Y, Z or the others were actually corrupt. That is the first obligation that they have to do it. Second point that we must remember, Rajdeep, is that corruption does not mean, even under the Prevention of Corruption Act, forget the English language or of a public discourse, corruption does not only mean, and I'm using the words of the Act, monetary gratification or any favor which is estimable in money.
Yes.
These are the words from there. And they say that it is any favor, it is any valuable thing. So I will give you an example. Consider this situation that a chief justice or a judge, who is the biggest litigant in the country? Tell me.
The government of India.
Yes. So the government of India, you are the judge, they appear before you every single day.
Yes.
In some form or the other. Now, let us say that if the pattern of your judgments is such that by, let us say, sheer coincidence, it goes always help, it is very convenient to the government. And you retire, and immediately you accept from that very litigant the chairmanship of the Human Rights Commission or the chairmanship of the National Company Law Tribunal, or a defunct body like the Press Council.
So are you telling me that every chief justice, are you telling me therefore that every chief justice who takes a post-retirement sinecure, if I may use that word, is therefore guilty of corruption? Well,
that is a very important point for the courts to consider, and persons like me have all, and many other very important, I'm nobody, but very important people have said that you should never accept anything from the biggest litigant who appeared before you. And you see, the people will judge not whether you accepted the job or not, Rajya Sabha nomination. I mean, what is it? But the previous Chief Justice has accepted this after a series of his judgments on the CAA, on electoral bonds, on Rafale, went in, were so convenient to the government.
Sir, but we've had a Chief Justice, a recent Chief Justice who's accepted a Rajya Sabha nomination. We've had other Chief Justices who become governors within a month of their retirement. Are we saying that that all the Chief Justices who did this, according to you, are in some way or the other corrupt? Because remember, sir, if you say that, tomorrow you'll find yourself being sued for contempt or being tried for contempt.
Forget sued for contempt. I will deal with it when that sort of thing happens. I am on the point of the meaning of corruption under the Prevention of Corruption Act.
You're saying it's a wider definition?
Yes. And secondly, I give you an example. Rajdeep, you and I are in the business of writing and speaking. Now, supposing you and I are completely financially honest, completely, but we proclaim high principles But when it comes to acting on them, we don't act on them, then we are intellectually dishonest, morally dishonest. You take an academic or a journalist, and he does not, he's beyond question honest as far as money is concerned. But he plagiarizes. So is he not intellectually and morally dishonest, morally corrupt? So please, corruption should not only mean buying and selling of MLAs.
So you seem to be suggesting that Prashant Bhushan...
Rajdeep, one point.
Yes.
People will, in the end, people will not go by what Prashant Bhushan says or you, and certainly not what I say. They will go by the experience they have of the judicial system. After all, so many Indians are before the courts every day. They know, and certainly the lawyers community knows whether all the judges are honest or not. Now, a very distinguished judge from Bombay, Mr. Iqbal Chagla, wrote the other day in the Indian Express that he, as the president of the Bombay Bar Association, had to move a resolution against 6 judges, sitting judges, that they were corrupt. And eventually they had to resign and leave. He then had to move a resolution subsequently against the Chief Justice, sitting Chief Justice of the Bombay High Court, that he is corrupt. So the fact that a few judges are corrupt is a matter of record.
I come back to it. I come back to it. Comments like these, or Prashant Bhushan's views, or indeed your views, what if the court tomorrow turns around, as indeed they have, that all of this is crossing a Lakshman Rekha? Those are the words that were used today by Justice Arun Mishra, that this crosses a Lakshman Rekha. It is not fair criticism. This is designed to undermine public confidence in the judiciary.
I think, how do you conclude that it is designed? I don't want to enter into the argument of a judge. I was not there. I have not heard what he said, and the context in which he said it. But what is this Lakshman Rekha? Who has defined, who has put it there? Not Lakshman. So it is your premise. And we may have different standards in these matters. For instance, a Puritan like me may feel that, no, sitting on a motorcycle is terrible, you should not sit on it. And others may feel, he's gone to the friend's house for a dinner or a lunch, and somebody said, sir, my son has bought this. And he said, acha, itni badi cheez hai. Dikhte hain kaise baithne mein kya lagta hai. So it is an innocuous thing to do. So there can be different views. And to say from that it is designed to do one thing or the other, I think that is then getting into the mind of another person and making inferences which then you will have to substantiate.
Let me come from there to the larger issue. What does...
I have come, you have been kind enough to ask me to answer your questions.
Yes.
Is there a design again of mine to come to your program so as to denigrate the judiciary? But if tomorrow somebody reads that, yes, there is a design, then, then they have to prove the point.
Let me ask you, though, that what does this say about the state of our institutions? You have been writing about this for a while. The state of our institutions that are meant to ensure that there are checks and balances in our system. When judges themselves feel that Prashant Bhushan could be sentenced to jail, does it in a way undermine institutions and democratic freedoms? Do you really believe that democracy is under risk, as many academics have suggested when they've signed on a petition in Prashant Bhushan's case, or are they exaggerating the threat?
Democracy is not under threat. Democracy has already been assaulted. And one of the features by which this is done, one of the devices by which this is done, is to completely remove all buffers between the state, between those who control the state and the atomized citizen. He should be just an atom. And that is what has happened in the case of norms, in the case of values, in the case of institutions. You forget the judiciary for the time being. Look at these regulatory institutions, Reserve Bank of India, Is it independent? These tribunals which have been set up, do you think anybody thinks that they are independent? So the civil service is an institution. The police is an institution. Do you think they are independent today, or are they the private armies, the enforcement directorate, CBI? These are institutions under our laws. The CAG, do you think they are functioning independently?
No, but
Mr.
Shourie, surely none of this is, this institutional decline is not necessarily post-2014. It's been building up for the longest time. The notions of committed bureaucracy, the lack of independence of our institutions is not recent, including the judiciary.
In fact, absolutely right. And not just committed bureaucracy, but the committed judiciary. That was the phrase used when
Mrs. Gandhi, yes.
Mrs. Gandhi, yes, when 3 judges were superseded for the Chief Justiceship. And if I may say so, a person like me has been writing about that for 40 years, not for 6 years. And for 40 years, it has been a decline, a sort of, if I may say, a secular decline, uninterrupted decline, and second-rate persons have been selecting third-rate persons for these institutions and then manipulating them. And now that has come to be accepted as to be aise hi hota hai. It is as it is, as Trump would say. And therefore, when you said that it is under threat is an understatement. It is already greatly hollowed. So I think the Supreme Court can certainly reverse course. It is, after a very small body of 31 persons, they are all learned, far more learned per capita than, say, our legislatures. And they can take the lead in resurrecting these institutions and starting themselves by themselves.
Should the start be by, first of all, decriminalizing contempt? Why should I go to jail for contempt? Do you believe, as in many countries in the world, it should just be a civil offense, if at all?
Yes, it should be. And that is the petition which N. Ram and Prashant Bhushan and I had filed.
Yes.
And then, and actually, that's a very interesting example that you have taken up. It was listed before one bench, I think, by Justice Chandrachud and Justice Joseph. And then suddenly it was taken away. And it was said that, no, it must go to so-and-so. Now, assume there are very good reasons for that happening. But what is the inference that would be drawn by an ordinary person in public life? This used to happen, if I may say so, under Justice Deepak Mishra, when he was Chief Justice. Judges going, cases going one way or the other, and not me, 4 judges, the sitting judges of the Supreme Court,
held a press conference in January 2018 on that particular issue of the manner in which the master of the rolls was distributing cases. But I want to ask you again in...
No, just 1 second.
Yes.
Yes, they did that. And just see what Justice Lokur and others have said. They signed that letter and what they have been saying about the assignment of cases now.
So, therefore, I come back in conclusion, Mr. Shourie. Do you believe that the judiciary today is facing its most serious crisis of credibility since possibly, as you said, the famous supersession of judges and Mrs. Gandhi and the manner in which the judiciary succumbed during the emergency? Are we facing, in your view, the most serious crisis of credibility since 1975?
Not the most serious, but certainly a very serious, not crisis, but a very serious situation in which the credibility of such an important institution, as the court says, the central pillar of Indian democracy, needs to be retrieved. And none of this contempt action can, that's not the way to retrieve reputations. Reputation is by conduct. Anybody in the street should say, yes, I can go to this institution. I give you an example. Father of the nation, Gandhiji, Jayaprakash Narayan, they never held any office. But would anybody need to remind them that your credibility is under question, and therefore you should do this, that, or the other. No, their conduct was such; it spoke for itself.
Are you saying, therefore, the judges have a guilty conscience?
No, I don't say they have a guilty conscience. Maybe I don't know their innards of their minds, but they certainly betray a nervousness which is probably not warranted for acting like this. As I meant, that you go on, you have a great axe in your hand, the Contempt of Court Act, and without following its procedures, for instance, of letting the person prove his point, you are going on swatting a fly or a mosquito. I mean, that shows nervousness. I do not know whether it betrays guilty conscience or not. No, not necessarily.
Right. Arun Shourie, as always, you shoot from the hip. Age has clearly not dulled your outspokenness.
You are making me feel old.
No, you're not. You remain young as ever. I hope that after this interview, you aren't charged with contempt. You haven't said, or neither have I said, something which will charge either of us with contempt.
Yes, and my defense will be Rajdeep made me say it.
On that note, my defense will be truth is a defense in a contempt case.
Yes, absolutely. You say, yes, Arun Shourie said it, and I will not dispute that.
Okay. On that note, Mr. Arun Shourie, thank you so much for joining me there on the news today.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.